The Blue Chip Sports Network presents Get in the Game with Eric, Brian, Reggie, and Jordan on iTunes, the Blue Chip Broadcasting YouTube channel, and BlueChipBroadcasting.com.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of Get in the Game. It's episode 79, and tonight we're talking and playing a little baseball, and the whole crew is here with us tonight again, and a special guest. And welcome, and who's joining us tonight?
Well, if I tell you who it is, Eric, I'm going to give away who my first pick was in the draft.
Okay, well,
you'll have to guess.
We will unveil.
Dusty Baker.
It is such a surprise here.
Oh, he said Dusty.
It's going to be a real shocker.
You had to get a manager.
Jordan Santa Maria, welcome.
What's going on, Eric?
Good to see you, man. And then Reggie, right down in the right-hand corner. How you doing, my man?
I am doing really well. I'm getting to know my boys. You know, we had our draft recently over the weekend, and a fun bunch they are. A fun bunch. They go way back.
So tonight, what we thought we'd do is let's talk some baseball. And we're going to do it in the context of the four of us got together and we drafted what we believe are the four best baseball teams in the history of mankind. Now, we had to bend some time frame coexistence continuum things. And we got guys from 1905 playing with guys that played in 2015. But this should be a lot of fun. And we had a draft. It consisted of 13 rounds. Each round was 1 through 4, and then snake it back 4, 3, 2, 1. So it was 8 picks in every round. And we're going to talk a little bit about the draft. We're going to talk about some of the players that we picked. But I am going to just give you a taste right now of what I feel is the best team that wasn't chosen. These guys weren't picked up in the draft. These guys are guys who weren't good enough to sit on one of our benches. Okay? Let's put that into perspective. Not starting.
Theoretically, Eric. Theoretically, these are guys that fall outside of the top 100 because there were 4 of us and we each drafted 25-man rosters. And we had some, constraints with positions and whatnot. But theoretically, the guys that you're about to share with us are guys that we feel are not in the top 100 in the history of the entire game.
And what's scary about that, and Brian, you can speak to this, I think, it's going to show exactly how stupid we are.
Oh, God, yeah. The audience is going to have to take it easy. The audience is going to have to take it easy on us because when you guys hear these names, man, oh.
Well, and some of the names you might not know, but when I give you the numbers, I mean, they're going to look at Brian and say, what are you thinking?
They always look at me and say that. Actually, they look at my wife and would say, what was she thinking? That's what they really say.
That is, there's truth in that. I can't lie. But here, our first baseman that wasn't chosen was Frank Thomas. Frank Thomas hit 301, hit 573 home runs, and he can't sit on one of our benches. The second baseman, Charlie Gehringer from Detroit, back in the early 1900s, all he did was hit 320 with a 404 on-base percentage. How about Wade Boggs, the chicken-eating third baseman who perhaps was one of the best third basemen ever with his 328 batting average and his 415 on-base percentage? Maybe it's the Wizard of Oz at shortstop, Ozzie Smith. 13 gold gloves at shortstop, and somehow Reggie can't find a spot for him to sit in the dugout just to keep him company, right?
The backflips made me nervous. I didn't want him to get injured. I need all my guys to be healthy because we're coming after the exceptionals.
Yeah, your insurance is a little bit sketchy, so I get that. How about Al Simmons out in left field? All he did was hit a cool 334 with a 535 slugging percentage. Maybe it's Ichiro Suzuki. You might have heard of him, right? 314 with a 357 on-base percentage in right field. He has a cannon. He can't play.
That was a tough one. I'm not going to lie. Ichiro was one of my favorites that got left off.
I'm sorry, Ichiro. When he didn't end up on the Chias.
Yeah, I was
surprised because he even has the look too, Jordan. He's got the hair thing that could maybe make that work too.
I know.
Well, here's a guy that I thought I might take and never did. It's the only man in the history of mankind to be drafted in all 3 major league sports. basketball, baseball, and football. He was drafted to play in those sports. How about Dave Winfield playing center field for this team? 283, 353 on base percentage. He could play a little bit. How about David Ortiz and
Is it just me or did Eric disappear?
He's gone.
He's totally.
Well,
we went David
Eric's
Ortiz
thinking
and
about it. We'll add a few more names to the list.
He's been captured by the ghost of David Ortiz. Ortiz, I heard, was upset that he didn't make the team, and he came in and kidnapped Eric.
He took him down.
I want you guys to know the best part is that we kept going with it for as long as possible until it was like, oh no, he's gone. Yeah, like he's not coming back.
We thought you might have had something happen to you.
there was a little bit of an earthquake, but we're okay.
That was good.
Oh,
For
my
David
goodness.
Ortiz, and then you froze. So we're not sure if he kidnapped you or zapped you or what happened.
No, David Ortiz just didn't make it either. Those guys comprise team number 5. And not even team number 5. This is the scrubs that can't even sit on anybody's bench.
Well, and Eric, think about the pitchers that didn't make any of the 4 teams either. Guys like Bob Feller, Dizzy Dean, Don
Ferguson Jenkins, Steve
Boogie Jenkins, exactly.
Warren Spahn. How about relievers? Lee Smith, Raleigh Fingers, and Goose Gossage. Those guys not on a team.
And the guy who really started the save, Bruce Sutter.
Yeah. I almost drafted Fingers just for his mustache. I thought he would have fit in real nicely with my guys.
Well, you could have had one player sit on one side of it and another player sit on another side of it. Balance would have been fine.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's
that thing.
2 other guys that didn't make it. Carl Yastrzemski, Hall of Famer. He didn't make your team 5.
Didn't make team 5.
And the all-time hits leader, Pete Rose, did not make team 5.
And
Yeah,
I love the way Pete Rose plays.
Not even my guy Vlad Guerrero.
That's true,
Can't even make
Vlad.
team 5.
Or even guys from way back, like Dan Brothers is a guy, played first base in the late 1800s, hit 342 for his career. 342, didn't make team 5.
I don't know what to tell you. I guess people now know what they're dealing with here. Manny Mo, Jack, and Stu.
All I know is I ain't Stu.
So let's talk a little bit before we go any further, before we start revealing who we drafted. And let's talk a little bit about what the thought process was as each of us went into this, trying to determine who we thought belonged on our team. And let's start with Jordan. Jordan, kind of what were you thinking as you were trying to put together your squad?
Well, I mean, going into this thing, I was pretty intimidated. So, like I feel like you guys all had a little bit of experience with kind of the simulator, how things go. And I just think in baseball in general, you guys are, you guys are the sages for the baseball world. And
you
I'm
realize
like
what he's
the
doing there? You realize what he's doing. He's calling us old.
You guys are like the oracle that, I look to for baseball advice. So it was intimidating, but looking into it, I knew that I wanted to be different. Like, I wanted to go with players that were, closer to guys that I knew that I grew up with. And then just toss in some of those, all-time greats so I know that I can compete on certain levels. But I think position-wise and, for the first couple picks, I knew that I wanted to go outfield just because those were where the numbers were. And that's how I felt. I felt if you were going to win, you had to have, one of the best outfield, that you could put together. So that's kind of my thought process I was going through.
All right, Reggie, when you were thinking about what you were going to do, how did you land where you landed?
Well, I knew I really wanted to play to the strengths of my park, and I have a short porch in right field, which is going to favor left-handed batters. So I wanted all my power to come from the left side of the plate. And I also knew that I kind of wanted to stack my rotation with a couple solid lefties to hopefully counterbalance my opponents a little bit. And since it's 405 feet out to left field at Griffith Park, so I knew I needed some guys with some speed. And I wanted to try to avoid the right-handed power bats. So I tried to load up with a bunch of guys who would get on base and set the table for my left-handed power and, steal some bases and make things interesting. So I kind of have like a half new age new era team with a lot of power, and then a half dead ball era team that can just run all over the place. And then pitching wise, I kind of, I waited until the middle rounds. I waited as long as I could to see where you guys were going to go. And I think I got a little bit reactionary there a couple times, but I really like the staff that I ended up with. So.
All right, Reggie, I will tell you, I'm just curious as to what modern guys do you think you have?
I don't have any modern guys. It's just the
modern
style of play. Like, I have a
1930?
few guys that can knock some out of the park is all I'm saying.
Hey, Eric, I think the only guys that are still alive are his two relievers.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Ryan.
That's
You're exactly right.
probably
I went way back.
He's got an average age on his ball club of 75, I think, at least.
Oh, I think it's older than that. It might be
That
like
could be.
105.
I think the team respects him, though, because he has the beard that, kind of that throwback beard that they can respect. So.
Okay, there you go. All
They
right,
were Eric's schoolyard pals.
Thanks. I knew them well. Brian.
I went with guys that can play in any park because my park's very fair being Wrigley Field because it's going to play small, it's going to play big. But I think because of the way the parks were set up, I looked more at the pitching staff. And outside of the number one guy that I drafted, who is still phenomenal, but he's not as much a power pitcher, everybody else I have is a power pitcher. They are strikeout guys. They are shut you down kind of guys, dominators with stuff. And I thought that would play really well no matter what park I went to. And then the other thing is defense was really important to me. All across the infield and the outfield, I have multiple, like double-digit Gold Glovers in multiple positions on my team. And I got some guys that can run. I got a lot of guys that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And I personally think I have the best player to ever play. That's just me.
Yeah. Brian's putting together a strong case here, man. Like that was like intimidating right there.
He's working hard. I since I'm going last, I get to wield the hammer, right? I have completely different perspectives on what your guys' philosophy and strategy was, of course. Reggie, you were looking for historical. Reg, he drafted pre-dinosaur guys.
It's true. I think I have a couple players that fought in the Civil War, and I'm not joking. Like we're old.
They were born.
A lot of them lived in caves. They were so Reggie came from the historical place. Jordan, by far, you look at his roster, and Jordan is contemporary. And he made no bones about it when he talked about his team. He was going to go with guys that he knew or at least knew of. The oldest guy on his roster was a guy that I watched play. Now, that could be pretty old.
That tells us nothing, Eric. That tells us nothing. I mean, that could be
Brian.
That could be Abner Doubleday. I don't know.
No, I'm not that old. Brian drafted romantically. He drafted by his heart and things that mattered to him on the romantic age of baseball, where these legendary guys lived and grew these reputations. And he really didn't stray from that late 50s, late 70s. Kind of where he lived is in the 50s through the 70s. And that's what his team is going to look like. Me, on the other hand, I was much more strategic, pragmatic, and smart. I just drafted the. I've
drafted all the jerks, man. I can't wait till you share your roster. I don't think you've got a nice guy on that squad.
Where are the sound effects?
Your mother would be ashamed of you. You can't bring any one of those guys home.
I'm playing in a ballpark that is really designed for power, and I went for guys that are going to hit the ball out of the park, because you can hit it out. If you're a pull hitter, you hit it out either side at 250, right? And if you want to challenge center field, you better be able to have, something to do it. So instead of fighting it and trying to wiggle around, I'm just going to embrace it. I'm going to hit guys that are going to target that center field fence and see what they can do. I've got big power. I got thumpers. And then I went and I wanted to build what I feel was the very best pitching staff. I was the first one to take a pitcher. I jumped into the pitching market first, and I think I stayed there longer. So I really feel I've got a pretty strong group of guys on the mound. So we'll see how that plays out.
You guys realize that if you hit one of his guys and you're playing at his place, you find the closest place to hop the fence.
Oh, yeah.
Which would be left or right field.
That's right.
So let's get right to it now. Now that we know all the drama's out of it, since we all know, who's going to win. But let's get to the draft itself. And we're just going to go over the first couple of rounds before we break down the teams, because the first, let's say, 16 guys are really interesting and why they were chosen. And the draft order went like this. In round 1, Jordan had the first pick. Reggie had the second pick. Brian went third. I went 4th and 5th. Then Brian went 6th, 7th for Reggie, and 8th for Jordan. And so now, without any further ado, the first round pick by the Cha-Cha-Cha-Chias was?
Yeah, the first round pick for the Cha-Cha-Cha-Chias was Barry Bonds. It had to be. Like I said, when I was going more contemporary, I had to go to the guy that really made me love baseball. So kind of that was one side of the pick, but also the guy who I just felt was the offensive powerhouse. And I think that you needed that, playing at the Polo Grounds, playing at all our parks, and the pitchers that we're going to play against. I had to feel like I got the offensive juggernaut, and I felt like I couldn't go wrong with Barry. So Barry was my guy 100%.
Now then, was that a surprise to any of the other of us?
You and I talked a little bit. We thought he might go Bonds.
Yep.
I figured he was going to go Bonds or Mays because of the Giant connection as well as the time in which he grew up. But it didn't surprise me that he went Bonds. And the way
I'm not sure.
Structured computer-wise, it might be the smartest pick because his numbers are stupid.
Well, and that simulator's not testing for steroids or anything, so it's just based on his numbers, and he is right up there in the conversation as the greatest player to ever play the game. Because it looks at their entire career. So he's going to be fast, he's going to be a good fielder, and he's going to hit bombs. And I knew sitting in the second spot that I was going to have access to one of 3 guys, and I wasn't sure which one Jordan would take, but Bonds was in that group of 3. So
the second pick of the first round went to Reggie and the White Sox.
Yeah, so Bonds was off the table, and again, I was looking for left-handed power, and I was looking at 2 guys, Ted Williams and Babe Ruth. Ted Williams has the all-time record for, he's legendarily the greatest hitter to ever play. He's got the highest on-base percentage of any other player in baseball. I really liked him, but I ended up going with Babe Ruth. One, because he is the spokesman of the sport, right? His first real celebrity athlete. And I figured the Red Sox needed a celebrity-type player to, we needed to make a splash with our fan base. And also
that fan base of one.
No, he's got Cohen and Ruby and
oh, they're big fans. They're big fans.
He's got his kids, Camden. He's got 3 fans plus himself. Lindy, we'll see who Lindy chooses in this.
Yeah. Another thing that tipped the scales for me in favor of Ruth is that he pitched too, and he had great numbers as a pitcher. So I can use him on the mound, I can use him in the field, I can use him at the plate.
Okay. The third pick of the first round went to the Nutcrackers. Brian, it doesn't take much to figure out who you took.
I picked the greatest player to ever play the game who just had a birthday this week. Willie Mays can do it all. And when you think about where we're going to be playing, Polo Grounds, an example where he played for many years, he can handle that center field when we're on the road. Think about it, he had 660 home runs playing at the Polo Grounds, and then the majority of his career at Candlestick Park hitting into the gale force winds. So to hit in the little bandboxes that we're going to be playing in, I think he's going to be scary. And to me, he pound for pound, best baseball player to ever put on a pair of cleats.
So far, if I'm reading the room correctly, everybody has gotten what they wanted, right?
Right.
Jordan wanted Bonds and was able to get him first pick, so that's clear. Reggie was debating between either Babe Ruth or Ted Williams. He could have had either one, and he chose the Babe. And then Brian thinks that Willie Mays is the best player of all time. You got who you wanted, right? I think that's fair.
Absolutely.
The three of you got what you wanted. I'm picking in what I felt was the best spot in the first round. I get pick 4 and 5. And what I did is I solidified my corner outfield. All I got was Ted Williams, the best hitter to ever live, and Hank Aaron, the home run king, sans Bonds, right? I feel I wanted Ted Williams. I didn't think he would necessarily be there. And so when I got Ted Williams, I was ecstatic. And then to pick up Hank Aaron, the hammer, right after him, I could not be happier. Between those two guys, I have almost 1,300 home runs between those two guys.
Probably close to about 1,300 errors too. I don't know. I know Teddy Paul didn't like to play defense.
Reggie, they're playing in left and right field for me. There's just not that much room. They can just stand.
Fair point. I
have a center fielder. So those were my picks. Ted Williams, number 4, Hank Aaron, number 5. And then with the 6th pick in the first round, we went back to the Nutcrackers.
Well, hang on, guys, real quick before we go there. I'm curious to find out from any of you who are watching this, the way it played out, our Mount Rushmore of baseball. So the top 4 players were Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, and Ted Williams. So those is the way it played out. Those are the 4 best players to ever play Major League Baseball. I'd be interested to hear any of you guys, leave a comment if you agree, disagree, anybody that we left out, anybody that we missed in the Mount Rushmore of baseball.
Yeah, I would say Henry Aaron would be the one guy that I would think people might replace Bonds with Aaron just because of some of the clouds that are over Barry's the full length of his career. Aaron would be the one guy I think that would be.
I could see an argument for a pitcher being on that list too.
Yeah, I think you have but pitchers. I think you have your own Mount Rushmore of pitchers. I think we'll talk about that too. So with the 6th pick, I already have the greatest player to ever play. Then I wanted to pick up the guy that, because of the way the parks are set up, Jordan and Fenway, short left field. You and Griffith Park, Reg, short right field. Eric, both short down the lines. I went with the greatest switch hitter of all time, who can play any of the outfield positions. He will DH for me most of the time, and that is none other than Mickey Mantle, the great New York Yankee. Give you an idea, Mickey Mantle's career OPS. Remember we said a good OPS is 800, 900 is phenomenal, 1,000 is like otherworldly. His career OPS was 977. Even higher than Willie Mays's. He was an
as a center fielder.
Talent.
Yeah, that's impressive.
As a switch hitter, he did
switch hitting center fielder. I mean, that's Yeah, you definitely cornered that market, Brian. There wasn't much in center field for the rest of us.
No,
but the interesting
I got
thing
some dudes that can go get it. They can go get it.
Here's the interesting thing, as Jordan said at the top of this thing, he thought that all the numbers, all the players were in the outfield. And so far, 6 picks, 6 outfielders. Right?
So did Reggie make it a clean 7 for 7?
I was the first one to break the seal with the number 7 pick. Again, I was looking for left-handed power, and I also, the simulator, I'm sure, takes injuries into account as well. And so I wanted to make sure that I could find a guy that I knew would be reliable. And who better than the original Iron Man, Lou Gehrig. I'm going to plop him right down at first base because he finished his career, not his best season or an MVP year or anything like that. His career slash line was 340, 447, 632 with a career OPS of 1080. So Brian, you're talking about 800's good, 900's like all-star level, 1,000's Hall of Fame. Obviously, Lou Gehrig's a Hall of Famer. And when I drafted him, I was pleased to hear him say that he walked up to the stage and said, today, I consider myself, the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
You
And
know,
I
he's
said,
been
that's
practicing
right,
that
you,
all day
Gary,
long
because
today.
you are now playing for the greatest team in this league, the Right Sox.
And he's a young man on your team.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, I think you're right, though, Reg. I think Gehrig's numbers get really overlooked because he played with Babe Ruth.
Yeah, they know each other really well. I knew that we'd have instant clubhouse chemistry.
There you go.
Or at least a big party, one or the other. So Jordan rounded out the first round with.
Yeah, so I think with my second pick, I knew that I wanted to stay with the contemporary movement, and I wanted to get the best player that I feel at the end of his career, when it's all said and done, I think he can be pushing for that Mount Rushmore. So I took Mike Trout. I knew I needed a center fielder that could, really move, that can kind of do it all. He had a good arm, he could run, he could hit, the whole shebang. And I think Mike Trout did that for me, and can definitely cover, in some of these ballparks from left to right, with pretty good, speed and coverage and stuff like that. But Mike Trout's numbers, I think, second to none. And especially, like I said, when he's said and done, I think he will be pushing out Mount Rushmore for sure.
So let's do this one more time. The first round went Bonds, Ruth, Mays, Williams, Aaron, Mantle, Gehrig, Trout. Now let's really quickly just go over the second round, because this next group of guys almost equally as impressive as the first ones, but we've got to do it quickly. So it went Reggie, it went the Red Sox, it went Brian and the Nutcrackers, myself with the Exceptionals. Jordan put 2 picks together back-to-back for the Chias. And then again, it was me, Brian, and Reggie going out. So real quickly, Reggie, who'd you take with the first pick of the second round?
I ended up going with the greatest shortstop to ever play the game, Honus Wagner. Bill James once said that the gap between Honus Wagner and the second best shortstop ever, which he believed to be Archie Vaughn, was the same as the gap between Archie Vaughn and the 20th best shortstop ever. So, I went with Honus. Career 358 hitter, 434 on base, 577 slugging. And 42 stolen bases a year. 42 stolen bases a year, so he can move a little bit too. 328 career hitter.
He can move. Brian, with the 10th overall pick you chose.
I was debating between going another position player or taking the first pitcher. There were one of 3 pitchers I wanted to have, so I knew I more than likely would get one of them, even if I didn't pick one here. So I rounded out the greatest outfield ever to be put together and picked Roberto Clemente, 12-time Gold Glover. 12 times. So he and Mays can patrol a good chunk of the outfield. Mantle, if he's got to play some left. And I got a couple of other, quote-unquote, extra outfielders that are pretty darn good that can help control left field. So I went with the Clemente in the 10th.
So Brian has already completed his outfield. For me, with the 11th pick overall, the 3rd pick in the second round, I went with a pitcher. I went with 1907's Walter Johnson. Walter Johnson, the first pitcher off the board, and he was the first pitcher off the board because he brings a 1.06 whip to go with his 417 wins and a career ERA of 2.17. Walter Johnson was the first pitcher off the board, and that brought us to Jordan, who had back-to-back picks, number 12 and 13.
Right. So with my first 2 picks, I went heavy outfield. I had Trout and Bonds, so I felt pretty comfortable there. I knew, anybody in right field I would get would probably, suffice with those 2 guys in the outfield. So I knew I was going to go infield. And I kind of wanted to take a steal from, I thought, Brian or Eric, because I knew, I didn't want to go full contemporary. Like I said, I needed to take some of those, older guys that you guys love. So I took Willie McCovey. And I had a couple guys at first base that I liked. There's a bunch. There's Albert Pujols. There's a bunch of contemporary guys that, could have played there. But like I said, I wanted to kind of take a jab at one of you guys. So I took Willie McCovey. And then with the second pick, I needed, to start my staff. And I knew I needed a left-handed pitcher. And I thought, one of the greatest left-handed pitchers, and I think for sure, if not the greatest pitcher of my time, from the left side was Randy Johnson. And he's going to throw gas. He's going to strike guys out. And then I went with Willie and Randy with back-to-back picks.
Okay. And so with the 14th pick of the draft and the 6th in the second round, it was my turn again. And I went out and got myself a center fielder who can flat out play and go get it. May not have been the nicest guy in the world, but you know what? Nice guy.
Was not.
So I took Ty Cobb. And the reason I took Ty Cobb is he's got a career slash line that looks a little like this. A 366 batting average, a 433 on base percentage, a 512 slugging percentage. So his OPS was 944, but just as importantly, the man could run. He stole 3 bases short of 900 bases when he was playing. I got a big center field. I need Ty Cobb to run around and not just steal fly balls from everybody else, but probably grandma's popsicle and the little kid's candy corn. So, Ty.
Oh, man, you got some interesting concessions over there. Popsicles and candy corn? What? All right.
Only the best for the exceptionals.
Yeah,
right.
I guess so.
That's something, that's for sure. Well, I had to go pitching. I couldn't get through the second round without a pitcher. So now Eric took Walter Johnson. I went with the original ace of the Giants. Began in 1900, and that is Christy Mathewson. His average season, 21-11, with a 2.13 ERA and a lot of opportunities to pitch in the postseason. Those Giants teams of the early 1900s were as dominant as any. And so I went with the big right-hander, Christy Mathewson.
Boy. And then to round out the second round, Reggie, the last pick of the second round, 16th overall, the number 16 player on our list is.
Yeah, so this is where I started to get a little nervous during the draft because I saw some pitchers come off the board. But, man, I remember going in thinking if I had the opportunity to put Honus Wagner and Rogers Hornsby next to each other in the middle infield, I would be a happy camper. And Hornsby's sitting right there for the 8th pick, and I snagged him. Or what was this? Not the 8th pick. It would be
16th.
The 15th pick.
16th.
Yeah, so I took Rogers Hornsby because he is the only player to ever hit 440 home runs in the same year. So the dude could hit and, played a pretty solid second base as well. And he's the last player. He holds the all-time single-season batting record at 400. He hit 424 in 1922, and he's the last player, I believe, to hit 400.
And that was in the dead ball era, too. I mean, that's when everybody's ERA was under 3.
Yeah, well, they also played with mittens instead of mitts. Just
and Reg, I'm not gonna lie, man. All these guys that you got, like, you started making me nervous because some of those numbers that you start talking about, I mean, that like some of the contemporary guys, like, you're just not gonna see that anymore. You know what I mean? So it was like, oh God, like, who are Hornsby?
We'll see, man. We'll see how it plays out. I know
and
that
JoJo and
pitching staffs
all these
too.
guys.
So now that we've kind of given you a taste of what the first couple of rounds look like, let's take a look at whole rosters just really quickly. And we'll start with the Chias again. And I'm not sure if I shorted you a Chud that time or not. We're just going to start calling you the Chias. Jordan, talk about your roster real quick, who you like and who else you grab.
Yeah, real quick. So let's screen share it real quick. Brian, shout out to Brian. He helped us out kind of putting together, a list of our guys.
That's the exceptional.
That's Eric's. That's not Eric's. Sorry. Here we go. So the Chias, my outfield. So like I said, I took Bonds. I took Trout. I had to take, like I said, contemporary guys that I loved and that I had so much fun watching. So that was Ken Griffey Jr. and Manny Ramirez. Ken Griffey Jr., I think, brought the swag to the baseball game. He was always cool. I had a pair of Griffeys when I was growing up. So I always loved Ken Griffey Jr. as a player. Manny Ramirez, I think, one of the best right-handed hitters of all time, in my opinion. And obviously, I'm at Fenway, so I had to pick a Boston Red Sox guy. So that was Manny Ramirez. Kirby Puckett and Tony Gwynn were in the later rounds, and I know I needed depth. Tony Gwynn was kind of like one of my family favorite players. Like my dad and my uncles used to talk about Tony Gwynn, even though they're, Giants and A's guys. But how dominant he was, playing for the Padres. And then Kirby Puckett was going to be kind of that speedster that I had in the outfield. And then moving into the infield, at catcher, I took Buster Posey. Easy choice for me. He's going to be the guy, defensively. I knew that was really important and that we were going to have to, really check those bases. I think Buster defensively checked the box. And then offensively, his numbers, again, second to none. Brian gave me the stat before the podcast that, his adjusted OPS was better than Johnny Bench and Yogi Berra, which I think, a lot of people talking about Buster Posey today wouldn't think that. And then obviously McCovey, I had Joe Morgan. I know I needed some speed and I wanted to take an old timer. Nolan Arenado at third base. I thought, even though he's a contemporary guy, again, his numbers and his power hitting was, again, second to none. Derek Jeter, one of my favorite baseball players of all time at shortstop. And then I knew I needed some flexibility at second and short, some utility guys. So Roberto Alomar was kind of my defensive guy. Jeff Kent, I think I could play kind of a little bit everywhere. And then Edgar Martinez was going to be my DH for most of the games. That kind of rounded out my position players.
And then your pitching staff real quickly.
And then pitching staff real quickly, I think the two horses are going to be Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez. I took Nolan Ryan because, again, I wanted to go power and I wanted guys to, strike guys out. Roy Halladay and Schilling were just some guys that I remember growing up and, their stretches, they dominated.
Just some guys.
But their
this
stretches,
thing, they are just guys. That's the scary part.
I like the Roy Halladay pick. I thought he might end up a little bit of a sleeper.
Yeah, so their stretches, I think, were dominant. Gaylord Perry, just another Giants reference, and then Tom Glavine, I needed a lefty just to complement Randy Johnson, and then Trevor Hoffman. I really wanted a Craig Kimbrell, but he was off the board. I really wanted Mariano Rivera. He was off the board, so I think Hoffman was the third best guy right there. Sparky from the left side, and then Dennis Eckersley, who I think could throw a little bit more innings for me if I needed him to.
All right, that is the Cha-Cha-Cha-Chias. I got to tell you, the one surprise I had about what Jordan did is I felt he reached a little early with pick number 26, and he took Robbie Alomar. He took that second baseman as the first second baseman off the board. We'll see how that plays off. I remember watching Robbie Alomar play. I love the way he played.
Good.
Well, but he came back and he got Joe Morgan.
That's a good point.
And like you said, Jordan, he's probably going to be your second baseman, and Alomar allows you to be kind of your backup middle infielder.
Right. And actually, Alomar offensively, not too bad. I mean, he hit over 300 for the career. I mean,
yeah,
no slouch. Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, no doubt. None of these guys are slouches. Reggie, who you got? Let's talk about your roster just a little bit. Names that nobody will know.
Yeah. So, you guys were kind of poking fun of me earlier. The rules of our draft or of our roster construction was that we had to have, 15 position players essentially, and then 10 overall pitchers, 2 of which had to be closers. And so, the closing position is relatively new if you look at the scope of baseball's existence. So I went really new with those guys. I picked up one guy that's still playing in Craig Kimbrell. I felt like he was the second best closer of all time. Currently, he has a career ERA of 2.06 and a career WHIP, that's walks plus hits, divided by innings pitched. So basically how many base runners he's giving up per inning. And it's under 1, which is unheard of. It's 0.95. So I thought I got a steal with Craig Kimbrell. A bit of a sleeper pick in Jonathan Papelbon as my other closer. But then
he really should have been on the exceptionals because he would have fit the MO.
Right. Yeah. We needed an enforcer is what we needed. I needed someone who was going to be willing to go toe-to-toe with Ty Cobb and the other jerks on his team.
You just needed somebody who could still stand upright instead of be 6 foot.
Yeah, so outside of those two guys, though, I don't have a single player that broke into the league after 1952. So we went real old school. I was hoping that I might get some low-hanging fruit from maybe some of you guys who maybe didn't research, or I don't know. That was just the strategy that I went with. I was really pleased to pick up Mordecai Three Finger Brown. He's one of my starting pitchers. Okay, got the nickname because when he was a kid, he was involved in a farming accident that took off two of his fingers. And I love a guy that can take life's lemons and turn them into the first ever knuckle curveball. And so he's in my staff.
That's all he could throw.
What's up?
With 3 fingers, that's all he could throw.
Yeah. Well, nobody could hit it, so that's all good. I already told you guys about my first 4 picks: Ruth, Gehrig, Wagner, and Hornsby. We picked up some left-handed power in Jimmy Fox, Mickey Cochran. These are some old names, guys. Billy Hamilton played in the late 1800s. Solid center
not the
fielder.
guy trying to make the Giants.
No. This one actually hit the baseball. This one has a career average of 344. Johnny Mize is on my team. Joe Jackson, Shoeless Joe, career cut short due to his cheating scandal. We've had a long talk. He's promised not to throw any of our games. But if somehow the Exceptionals beat the White Sox at any point during the season, we're going to have another one of those talks because that's the only way that it would probably happen. We went with Willie Keeler, stood 5 feet 4.5 inches tall, one of the shortest players to ever play the game, but the kid could run and he could get on base.
Okay, stop real quick. Can we get a picture of Randy Johnson pitching to Wee Willie Keeler?
Oh man, that is a sight. Yeah, we'll maybe the team that we have employed can work a little bit of Photoshop magic or something. Let's see, we got Tris Speaker, Nap LaJoy, Ed Delahanty, Bill Dickey. Those are some great names. But then the pitching staff is where I really, found some gold, I think. I picked up Addy Joss. Addy Joss has a career ERA of 1.89, a career whip as a starter below 1 of 0.96. I already mentioned Mordecai Three Finger Brown. We picked up Ed Walsh, Lefty Grove, Eddie Plank, and Old Hoss Radburn, another favorite of mine. Old Hoss, his real name's Charlie, but everybody nicknamed him Old Hoss because he played in 1906. So he's old, and apparently that's where we get the I don't know the phrase Charlie horse, because he complained of cramps after the game, probably because he threw 400 innings per year. This is 1906. So he complained of cramps all the time, and people started using the phrase Charlie horse. That came from Old Hoss Charlie Radburn.
There you go.
Not enough Gatorade in the dugout.
Right. Yeah.
So basically what Reggie's done is, for those of you still on quarantine, he's now given you something to do to play this back, write those names down, and then try to figure out who the heck they are, because most of our audience is going to have no clue.
Yeah.
And don't feel bad, because we would have had the list up, but even we didn't know who those guys were. So that's why Reggie
I didn't have time to go dig through all those guys. There's no way.
Wikipedia doesn't go back that far, I guess.
All
I
right.
don't know.
Brian, we got to go rapid fire. Who'd you get?
That's right. I can go quick as soon as Jordan throws it up. So we're going outfield first, right, Jordan?
Yep.
So we got Mays, Manuel Clemente. Oh, we just added the guy who had a 56-game hitting streak in Joe DiMaggio, the greatest stolen base player of all time, Ricky Henderson, and probably one of the toughest guys to ever play the game, both as a player and as a manager, Frank Robinson. All Hall of Famers. My infield, my 2 catchers, Roy Campanella and Johnny Bench. Actually, Campanella with better career offensive numbers than Johnny Bench. But here's the thing that's crazy. Campanella threw out 57% of the guys who try to steal against him. Run against me at your peril. Stan Musial, the great lefty first baseman from the Cardinals, along with Harmon Killebrew. There's a platoon for lefty-righty. I think those guys combined for over 1,000 home runs between the two of them. Jackie Robinson, don't need to say anything else about him, the Brooklyn Dodger. Cal Ripken Jr., the Iron Man at short. Francisco Lindor is going to be my middle infielder. And then 2 of the greatest third basemen to ever play, one from the right side, one from the left side, Michael Jack Schmidt and George Brett. And my pitchers, we went old school and new school, and then we just went mean school. Christy Mathewson, the great Giant. Bob Gibson, charged the mound at your danger there, Mr. Exceptionals, especially Mr. Cobb. Kershaw, who has as good a numbers as any, even though he's a contemporary. Max Scherzer averages more than 10.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Rube Waddell to add another lefty to the rotation. And then these guys didn't even make the starting rotation for my first week. Juan Marichal, John Smoltz, and Greg Maddux. So we can power pitch you or we can carve you up like Greg Maddux. And then my lefty out of the pen is Carl Hubble, and the closer, the greatest closer of all time, Mariano Rivera. So you'd better be ahead of the Nutcrackers going to the 9th, or you are a loser.
He's got confidence. He's got confidence. Well, let me tell you what the Exceptionals did, because I feel we truly are exceptional. I got an outfield of Williams, Aaron, and Cobb. Okay, that we can just stop right there. All three of them combined about 1,600 home runs. I don't know, kind of like that combination. Mel Ott, an old New York Giant, he hit over 300 for his career. Reggie Jackson, the straw that stirs the drink kind of a thing. He is probably one of the biggest clutch hitters. And the guy that they don't have listed there that they forgot was Mr. Irrelevant. He was number 100 in the draft order. And all it was Duke Snider. And Duke Snider, who hit 307 with a 421 on base and a 541 slugging percentage, over 400 runs. He was Mr. Irrelevant. On the infield, these guys can flat out play. Mike Piazza, probably the best offensive numbers for a catcher in history. Yogi Berra, he threw out 50% of the runners that ran against him. He'll be my defensive replacement at catcher. By the way, picked up Yogi Berra with pick number 96. Hank Greenberg, another guy who can leave the yard and leave it quickly. Greenberg has a slugging percentage of over 600 and an OPS of over 1,000. Eddie Collins at second base is a defensive whiz, and he also steals bases like nobody's business. He stole 741 bases. So we're going to test your arms back there, Mr. Campanella. We'll run on you.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie Collins. Alex Rodriguez at shortstop, probably my weakest hitter in the lineup with over 600 home runs. Chipper Jones at third base. He slashes at a cool 303 batting average, 401 on base for a 930 OPS, and all he did was hit 468 jacks. Picked up Rod Carew, Albert Pujols, and Ernie Banks. Picked up Ernie Banks just because I love the concept of let's play two. Then go to the pitching staff, and I think this will tell you all you need to know. When my number one is Walter Johnson, my number two is Sandy Koufax, my number three is Cy Young, my number four is Grover Cleveland Alexander, Pete Alexander, and my number five is Tom Seaver. I'm not even getting Whitey Ford into the game, Jim Palmer, or the Rocket, Roger Clemens. And everybody kind of sleeps on Billy Wagner as the closer, probably has the second best numbers all time of a closer. And then Hoyt Wilhelm is going to provide me some medium to long relief and setup work. So that is the Exceptionals. I am extremely happy about my team. They are going to leave the yard a lot.
I think everybody's gunning for Eric. Everybody's gunning for Eric.
Bring it on. Ty Cobb is sitting here. He's sitting. I'm having to hold Ty Cobb back right now.
You got the Bustas on your team, and you're just
Reggie Jackson back.
We're coming.
I'm
we're
having
coming
to hold
get
Ted Williams back. I'm having to hold. Who else was it?
The wing and a miss.
Hey, bring it on. So Reggie, why don't you tell him how this whole thing works?
Well, the engine that we're using to simulate this fictitious fantasy series or season, whatever it is that we're calling.
And you people are hungry for baseball. We're going to give you baseball.
That's right. So we've gone through a company called Stratomatic Baseball. They've I think they first started developing sports simulation games in 1962. And for the longest time, they have been heralded as one of the most accurate representations of real life play and statistics in game form. They started out as a tabletop board game company. It's like a cards and dice game. Think Dungeons and Dragons for fantasy sports.
Yes, way to make us all.
Yeah. If you're a sports geek or nerd, you'd probably love Stratomatic. But in relatively recent years, they've come out with computer simulators that recreate a game. And basically what it is there's an engine, there's a 50-50 chance that the game is either going to refer to the pitcher or the hitter. And everything is, all of the results are extrapolated out based on their averages. So if a guy's a 300 hitter, let's say, there's going to be 3 out of 10 times that he's going to get a hit. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to assemble our lineups. We have a 54-game schedule. We're each playing each other 18 times. We get 2 series per week head-to-head. We set our lineups. We set our pitching rotation. We do have some control as managers in terms of how frequently we want to steal or bunt or hit and run, different decisions like that. And then it's going to play out like regular baseball. The game's going to tell us the results, and we'll get a box score. We'll get play-by-play feedback, and so we'll kind of be able to relive, or not relive, live out this fictitious league. And we have a hypothetical scenario where somebody like Randy Johnson at, 6'11", faces the 5'4" wee Willie Keeler from 80, who's 80 years his senior or whatever. So it's going to be really fun, and I think even more so than that, the opportunities for a little trash talking and just discussion about baseball history is going to be offered to us through this.
So every week we'll be able to give you scores, a little bit of an update on maybe things that are going on in standings, just as a short segment of everything we do. It's not going to be all fantasy baseball all the time. This is just going to give us. You guys want to tune in to SportsCenter and get scores. We're going to be able to have you tune in here, and we'll give you scores, some box scores, and some highlights as well. Thought it would be fun, since we don't have baseball right now, to have just a short segment, maybe 5 minutes, every time we come on to talk about this baseball league. And
what we hope, Eric, is that by the time we're done, maybe we do have some real baseball. That would be the ideal. That would be the hope. Is that by the time this 9 week is over, as we get into early July, that we would be able to have some real baseball to actually talk about, not just this. But this is going to be fun, and hopefully this will be a bridge to get to till the real games begin on the field.
So Reggie asked y'all to let us know who is on your Mount Rushmore of baseball. Shoot us email, shoot us text, respond to us, make a comment.
Comment
on YouTube,
right down there in the comment section.
Right down there. And
down
do
there.
that. Also, go ahead and make your predictions about who's going to win the league.
And we will have a Twitter poll out this week to promote or to give everybody a chance to choose who they will think will win. And, maybe, Eric, we have a couple of guys that watch this that have a little street cred in the sports world. Maybe we can get them to chime in a little email or maybe even a little voice or a little video thing that we can throw up so that they can give us a sense of who they think, from their professional opinion, would win.
Look, whatever the team has a jingle already. My team already has a jingle. Cha-cha-cha-chia for the win.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have a mascot?
Whatever team has a jingle.
I think not.
I don't need any of those things. I just hit home runs. I'll be fine.
So wing and a miss.
Want to thank you all for listening to another podcast here of Get in the Game, featuring myself, Eric Davis, Brian Nelson, Jordan Santa Maria, and Reggie Wright. And the one thing we want to leave you with is no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, get in the game.
You've been listening to Get in the Game, an exclusive presentation of the Blue Chip Sports Network. Get in the Game with Eric, Brian, Reggie and Jordan on iTunes, the Blue Chip Broadcasting YouTube channel, and BlueChipBroadcasting.com.